back in the middle of March, when all of this COVID-19 crud started to creep into culture and society, as far as how states and regions, mayors, governors, even federal agencies were starting to react, I made a prediction that this was going to some degree, disproportionately affect churches, Christians. Now, when I say churches and Christians, I'm referring to Christendom in the United States, not my particular brand of Christianity. There are, as anybody knows, thousands of different churches and denominations in just the United States alone. Some of those I could partner with in ministry, in my work as an evangelist and apologist. On my other YouTube channel, if only even one, I've said as much there. I've also done some critiques, some pretty hefty and hard and harsh takedowns of especially local churches here in southeast Minnesota. However, that's not what I want to focus on in this particular commentary. What I want to focus on is, one, I warned you. I warned you as a Christian, as a constitutionalist, as a patriot, not in the radical way, the way some of the patriot movements and the patriot militias operate, but as a patriot, as a constitutionalist, as a reasonable paleo-conservative. I warned you. I warned you that this was going to happen. I told you this was going to happen. As I've also referenced in other videos, in other commentaries, I've lost friends over this. Not by my choice, by theirs. I've also done a commentary or a response to a man who I greatly respect. Not as some sort of hero, if you will, but I did a response to Phil Johnson on this, on Grace Community Church out of Los Angeles. I did a response to some things that he posted, where he was taking Christians to task for their civil disobedience. And I'm here today to tell you that I praise God that Grace Community Church, John MacArthur, and men like Mike Riccardi and Phil Johnson have now taken a stand. I am not going to lambaste them for being late to the party, as some have said. I'm not going to lambaste them for that, but I'm going to praise God that they've made that decision. But I'm also going to now continue to say what I've been saying since the middle of March, is that I warned you. I told you this was coming. And it's only heating up. In the last few weeks, a church in Nevada brought suit against the city, or excuse me, against the state, and over their draconian measures of telling the churches that they had to meet even more severe limits than casinos and restaurants did. And the Supreme Court backed up the state. Chief Justice Roberts, who was a conservative appointee, mind you, joined with the leftist on the Supreme Court. People like RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and others. And it was Calvary Chapel of Dayton Valley in Dayton, Nevada. And they argued that the state treated houses of worship less favorably than it did casinos, restaurants, and amusement parks. Those businesses have been limited to 50% of their fire code capacities, while houses of worship have been subject to a flat 50-person limit. Now, that doesn't sound like much, right? But it's huge. And the dissenting opinion, joined in by Justices Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, and Brett Kavanaugh, said in their 24 pages of dissent that the distinction made no sense. And they went on to say that the Constitution guarantees for free exercise of religion. It says nothing about the freedom to play craps or blackjack, to feed tokens into a slot machine, or to engage in any other game of chance. But the governor of Nevada apparently has different priorities. A public health emergency does not give governors and other public officials carte blanche to disregard the Constitution for as long as the medical problem persists, Justice Alito wrote. And the court considered a similar objection from a California church in May, and it rejected it by the same 5-4 vote. But Justice Alito, who dissented in the earlier case, said the new one was more troubling in light of the differing treatment of casinos and churches. So the Supreme Court bent to the left right now. Roberts is not a constitutionalist. He is not constitutionally inclined or constitutionally friendly. Right now, only 4 of the justices are bent that direction. And this is only going to get worse. People need to understand that this is only going to continue to be an issue. And we're going to see other states do what is happening now in California, which is, over the last several days, the story is breaking that Grace Community Church, John MacArthur fame, grace to you, Grace Community Church, made up of thousands of people, very biblically conservative, and now showing that they're very constitutionally minded. They're being threatened with fines for the church and for John MacArthur personally, and they're being threatened, the leadership, the elders are being threatened with arrest. John MacArthur has personally been threatened with arrest if he continues to meet in person, if he refuses to shut the doors of the church and meet their demands for how churches are supposed to be performing. And you have to understand that the Constitution is literally there to limit government, not just federal government, but state and local government as well. The Constitution is there to limit the government and free the people, or keep the people free, if you will. So the government can't come in and say, as a government entity, as an elected servant, we are here to tell you what's good for you and only apply the Constitution when it suits us. That's not how it works. That's not how this any of this works, to use the commercial. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. The Constitution applies, period. Now, there can be some constitutional restrictions to some degree. Sometimes I'm on board with some things, like I don't know if a violent felon who has murdered numerous people should be allowed to own firearms. I don't know that I would trust that man to be an upright member of society and be part of the established citizen militia, if you will. But that being said, where are we going to draw the line? When does the government not have to follow the Constitution, and why? Why? And if they can ignore the First Amendment, which says that the church cannot be regulated by the state, the state has no say over places of worship. The state has no control over that. How in the world can we sit back comfortably as Americans and say, well, you get what you deserve? This is a pandemic, this is a health emergency, and while I believe in the Constitution, and as I've said in previous videos, your belief in the Constitution does not validate, or your lack of belief does not invalidate the Constitution. The Constitution is there. It says what it says, and it's not open to interpretation. Period. You don't get to interpret the Constitution in a way that's favorable to what you want it to say at a particular time just because you need it to read a certain way because it favors you. So when Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, or the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, when they make these decisions and they start to target places of worship, and I'm gonna lump in synagogues and mosques and everything else, when you start to target these places and you force them into compliance under fear of the penalty of your order, of your mandate, which is not law, you are an enemy of the United States. Do you understand this? Americans, Christians, if your local elected servant has taken to themselves the power to circumvent the Constitution and impose upon places of worship how they can worship, when they can worship, and what they can do while they're doing those things, they have made themselves enemies of the people, of the nation, and they are no longer legal or constitutionally allowed to stay in office. They're enemies. Now, I'm not talking about armed revolt. That's not what I'm advocating. I'm saying that they should be removed, and that local judges should be reading the Constitution and saying, you check mark this spot right here, this part, enemy. Your powers gone, null and void. You can't do this anymore. In fact, you're out of office. We will replace you. That's what the courts should be doing right now, because that's how the courts are to function. The courts are to check both the legislative and the executive branches. And when an executive, whether it be a mayor or a county board, and the county board, you could argue, depending on how it works out, could be the legislative branch. So let's say when you have an executive branch that's determined for itself that it is going to make a law when they don't have that power, and then enforce it under penalty of law. The legislative branch can step in, and the courts can step in and put them in check. When the courts fail, the legislative part should be taking that step. If the legislative body fails, then the courts should be stepping in and taking that role. That's how they work, but they're not working that way. right now, legislative bodies are in cahoots, if you will, with executive bodies. And in those places where executives are doing the right thing, oftentimes the legislative bodies are fighting against them because there's an agenda. And everyone has an agenda. Everyone has a scheme. Everyone has a reason why they do what they do. And I'm fine with that, but let's be honest, let's be transparent. Gavin Newsom is a Marxist. Period. He's a Marxist, and I'm not that person who sees Marxists everywhere. But Gavin Newsom is a Marxist, and he's pushing his agenda. Eric Garcetti is a Marxist. He's pushing his agenda. They're going after Grace Community Church, Sun Valley, California. They're going after them. They're going after them hard. There's threats to turn off their electricity, to turn off their utilities by way of water. They're talking about arresting a pastor for what? What crime? What crime? And how long are we as Americans, as citizens, as we the people, who are directly underneath the Constitution when it comes to who rules this country, how long are we as the citizens going to take this? How far are you willing to be pushed? How far are you going to kowtow? And if your church is kowtowing, if your church is saying, okay, we're going to comply, then they're going to either have to come to a point where they draw a line and say, we're not complying anymore, and then they're going to have a harder time because they've been compliant for this long. Or they should just say, we're going to comply with everything, we're going to do whatever you say, please don't persecute us. And this is why churches should just reject 501c3 status. Period. This is all part and parcel of that. There should be no 501c3 for Christianity. Let the other religions do it. There should be no tax write-off for what you give to your church. Your church should not be getting tax write-offs. Whatever the church takes in, let them pay tax on it. Period. But this is how the door was opened for churches to have to comply with governor's mandates, with state legal mandates, because we've wanted that tax exemption. Because as conservatives, we're more interested in not paying taxes than we are with honoring the scope and the breadth of the Constitution. We brought this on ourselves. And those churches and those spiritual leaders within Christianity that continue to comply, you're setting yourselves up to be taken out. Period. You think this isn't going to come to Minnesota? The push is on every day to scare Minnesotans into compliance. And so many people are walking around like zombies. Okay, whatever you say, Governor Walz, whatever you say, just keep me safe. Keep me safe. Because I can't be trusted to take care of myself. That's Christians. And I'm not doubting their Christianity. Some of them, obviously, I would. But what's next? What's your church going to say if they say, if you want to meet, everyone will be vaccinated, and they will have proof? Where is your God? If you want to worship your God, you will have the vaccination. And you will provide the proof of the vaccination to the person at the door, to the political officer who stands at the door, and will report to all of the authorities anyone who tends to worship or enter the building without their card. And we will have them arrested, and we will have their leaders arrested if they do not enforce this. You will have your vaccination card. You will be shown to be COVID-free, or you will not worship. Do you understand? We have the power. We have the power. We are the leaders. we tell you what you should do. Is that the world that you want to live in, Christian? And hey, look, I'm all for persecution. Let it come, but let it come because we're preaching the gospel. Let it come because we're taking a stand on the things that are right for true justice, not social justice, which is not going to get you persecuted, by the way, but God's justice. Let that persecution come for that. But this is not what we should be fearing. If your church is complying, it might as well just keep complying. It has no leg to stand on at this point. When the state says something, when the governor orders something, if your mayor orders something, yes sir, yes ma'am, whatever you want, we're done. We're not resisting anymore. Whatever you tell us to do, we're going to do. We need more people, frankly, like me. The church needs more people like me, more people like James White. More people. We need more Christians who are willing to stand up and tell their churches, no, we're not, I'm not obeying, I'm not complying. Do what you want. Discipline me out. Tell me I'm not welcome here anymore. Fine, whatever. At least we'll know where we stand. But we need more voices. We need more leaders like John MacArthur. We need more leaders like the leadership of Apologia down in Arizona. We need more leaders like, and I know a lot of people don't like him, but we need more Doug Wilsons out there who are saying enough is enough. Don't comply. Or like my friend Luke up in Canada. We need more of that. Telling the churches, telling other Christians, enough is enough. Because if they can shut down, if the Supreme Court can back up a state and shut down a church in Nevada, if California can come after one of the largest, most biblically and doctrinally solid churches in the country, Grace Community Church of Sun Valley, they can shut down your church like that, especially if your leadership is compliant. That kind of complacency, that kind of compliance, that's not biblical submission to ruling authorities. It's fear. It's cowardice. It's panty-waisted, milk-toast, spineless men pretending to be adults who are really just little boys playing at a game as they've been feminized, emasculated. That's all it is. Sic semper tyrannis. As always, thanks for watching the video. Thanks for being open-minded. Thanks for listening. I would ask that over here in the corner, somewhere on your screen, you hit the subscribe button. It's important, not for me, but because mainstream media, legacy media, isn't going to get the word out. They're not going to let people who don't toe the established line speak. So for the sake of liberty and for the sake of the defense of this nation, small little independent voices like mine need to be heard, especially the interviews. It's got very little to do with my commentary and a lot more to do with the interviews and the people who are affected when liberties are tread on. So once again, hit the subscribe button, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much.